Alright, what is up guys? This is Manic here, and before this video starts, I do want to say that I forgot to issue a spoiler warning at the top of this video. Um, I'm gonna issue one right now. Spoiler alerts. I do understand that like Mass Effect is a game that came out years ago, but with Legendary Edition, I feel like a lot of people are gonna gravitate towards Mass Effect videos, and they're gonna want to watch them, and a lot of them. So if you're one of those people that's come across my channel or come across this video, I am gonna and you haven't beaten the game, I am gonna issue a spoiler warning. This is my thoughts on me beating the game on insanity mode, Mass Effect 1 through Mass Effect 3, all the DLCs needed. I think I skipped 1 or 2 in Mass Effect 1. Doesn't matter. And yeah. So yeah, just keep that in mind. Spoiler alerts. And I can't really think of anything else. So yeah, enjoy the video. Hi, what is up guys? Losomaniac here, and welcome to another video. It's been a while since I've made one, but I think it's been a week. But I want to start this off by saying, kind of give like a different intro. So for the past 3 weeks, I played Mass Effect Legendary Edition on Insanity mode. And today, I want to talk about my experiences with this, because I got shit to say. Now, before I start, I do want to say I am not the best at this game, but I am not the worst. I am pretty moderate. I'm pretty much as good as anyone else's. I'm just standard. So, if some of you guys are watching this who have played Insanity mode, been like, oh, that part was easy. You're terrible at this, or some of you guys may be like, that I struggled with that part. I'm surprised that you managed to get through that. I'm just here talking about my experiences. Also, I made a list of I commented, I added like comments and whatnot to some of these. I'll go over all of these. There's a lot to go through now, but first, I do want to go over some of the main stuff, and if there's any useful information, I did kind of sort it out by the 3 different games, but I kind of added notes to all of these differently. So I'll go over the information that I had planned at the beginning first. I've a shit ton of pointless info, just that way you guys can kind of get an idea as to how I played this, and kind of how I went at this, just that way in case some of you guys are interested as to what my playthrough looked like, you guys can get the idea. Now first, let's start off with the 4 main pointless info. The pointless info number 1 was my gender. My gender was a female. Now, here's a bit of a fun fact for you. The original intention was to be a male character. So, yeah, the original intention of me going through Insanity was to be a male character, because ever since I started playing Legendary Edition of Mass Effect, I've been switching between male Shepard and female Shepard, starting with female, and then at this point in time, it would have been male Shepard, but I wanted to take but I've been doing, like, every playthrough I've been doing, I've been going up to, like, the harder difficulties, skipping Veteran, because I just figured, you know, let's just skip Veteran and go straight to Hardened. And you may notice that some parts I do reference that Hardened was a lot more difficult than Insanity, so there were some parts in there, some of these I struggled on Hardened, but not so much with Insanity, so just keep that in mind. So yeah, my original intention was to play as a male on Insanity, but after I did Hardened, I decided to take a break and go back to casual, just so I can, take a break, you know, kind of from the hard stuff, which was a bad idea, and you'll see why. So yeah, that was the original intention, was to play as a male. The original romance idea, however, was Miranda, because I did say that like around the time that I finish Insanity, I'll start experimenting with romances, kind of try out all the different romances, see what they are, see if I like them or not. Which I am not doing right now. After I beat Insanity, I went back to Mass Effect 2 just to romance Miranda, because why not? So yeah, my original romance, or my new romance for my female shepherd, ended up being Liara. And the reason that is because, I don't know, I kind of wanted to, like, reward myself with, like, a little, like, romance thing between two people. And I figured that, Liara would have been, like, a nice pick, considering the fact that she shows up in the first one, second one, and the third one, even though she's not as prominent in the second one as she is in the first and third one. She still shows up anyways in the Legendary Edition. So, and then Miranda doesn't show up in the first one. She's more prominent in the second one, and she's sidelined in the third game. So, yeah, again, pointless info. My morality was Paragon, so the whole time I was being nice because I hate being mean to people. And my combat style was a soldier. Alright, so... Oh, let me... So, I'm sorting out some of these stuff. If there's any useful information I'll talk about, within my pointless info, I just have like a bunch of different stuff, so I'll make sure to talk about it. So yeah, my combat style was soldier. I did start off as a soldier on the first one just because it's pretty straightforward, and so I thought, how about I just stick with that, and then after Insanity, I'll experiment with not only the romances, but the different play styles, which kind of like me with Miranda right now, I haven't gone around to do, because I'm still a soldier. But maybe once I start, which means that since I'm going back and romancing Miranda, that means the first person I start off with romancing is Kaden, for my female. And yes, I do kind of keep that pattern going. I kind of want to keep it split. So yeah, so first, let's start off with my experiences with Mass Effect 1. How I kind of went at this was that since there are like 3 different planets you visit, once you become a Spectre and own the Normandy, I kind of want to take notes on that. But I did want to start off with Eden Prime. It was pretty easy. This was the first time where like my cockiness got into play. I was like, am I seriously on Insanity? I checked, yes, I am on Insanity, but it was pretty easy. It was a lot easier than I would have expected because obviously it's Insanity mode. Whatever. And I did put these in order based on how I did them, as you'll see soon. So yeah, there weren't any difficulty areas. I did label difficulty areas through some of these. Next is Therum, aka the planet where you get Liara. This one sucked. This was my first experience into like how bad Insanity was gonna be. I knew that for a fact. I didn't, however, expect it to be this bad. I kept dying constantly, so many times. I brought Garrus and I think Rex with me, so that's kind of where I went. Squad mates don't really matter, but I just figured if some of you guys wanted to know, that's kind of where I was at with it. So yeah, this one sucked. The difficulty area was the area before the ruins with all the Geth and the Geth Stalkers and Colossus, or the Geth Armature, that stuff. That final area before you are able to go into the ruins, that was the pretty tricky part. And yes, the Geth Stalkers did become a problem just because they constantly move everywhere and it sucks. So yeah, there is that. Noveria was not as difficult as I thought. Don't get me wrong, it was difficult. It was difficult. But this was one of those where I thought the Rachni would kick my ass the whole time. So I thought it'd be a case of like, oh, Therum was bad, Noveria, it's gonna be worse, I'm gonna be here for hours. But then I kind of learned of little tricks and secrets, which I'll talk about here in a moment. So with that, Noveria, again, wasn't as difficult as I thought it was. Most of the time it was just talking or relying on other people or using specific ammunition that I had to use. The difficulty area, though, was Peak 15 Entrance Garage and the Rift Station. The Peak 15 entrance garage contains the Geth destroyers in the garage. Yeah, and the Rift Station was Captain Ventralis and the ERC Mercs. That's why Rift Station was pretty difficult. Matriarch Benezia wasn't as tricky as I thought it was. The Matriarch Benezia section, I did bring Liara because I'm romancing her. Why not? But no, it's because her mother's there, so I thought let's do that. So yeah, but overall, I was very surprised with how easy the Rachni were. Because whenever I did Hardened, I struggled with the Rachni. Granted, I skipped Veteran. I went from normal to Hardened. I didn't go normal to Veteran to Hardened. I went from normal straight to Hardened. So that's kind of why I think that's kind of why I struggled there a bit. So yeah, and I do want to note that the Rachni one hits, but they weren't tricky. They weren't as tricky as expected, so yeah. They were a pain in the ass, but not as much as Captain Ventralis or the Geth Destroyer that is in the garage. Yes, Ferris was pretty easy, although I did take precautions, which is something I should have done with Therum, but considering the fact I had no idea how the ammunition types work, kinda, I did take precautions. This one I expected to be pretty difficult because of the Thorian turned enemies. I forgot what they're called. But the humans that were affected by the Thorian, I thought those would be pretty difficult, but they were pretty easy. I did kind of change weapons a bit. I did go for higher damage and higher accuracy. I didn't worry about heatsink. I'd rather have higher damage and accuracy as opposed to like heatsink be a major concern. So yeah, so the difficulty area was the Thorian, but however, or the Thorian area, however, the difficulty enemy was the Geth, considering the fact they take up 90% of the Pharos mission. Yeah. So next was Virmire. A lot easier than expected. Granted, most of the time you're there, it is mostly you mostly use the what is it called? The Mako. You mostly use the Mako, so it was pretty easy to deal with. Yeah, the difficulty area was the area after placing the bomb. It was in between the area between placing the bomb and having to choose between Kaden or Ashley, which I will talk about who I sacrificed. And why, I guess there's no real reason why. So yeah, it was with the Krogan and Geth enemies, or Geth Stalker enemies, and surprisingly enough, the tricky enemy was the Krogan, because there are more of them. The Krogan became a major problem, considering the fact that they rushed me throughout the entire time that I went through that area. That was also the same area I struggled in on Hardened. So there's that. So after Virmire, at this point I come prepared. I think I brought Liara and Ashley with me to. I know I brought Liara. I always bring Liara with me to Ilos, whether I'm romancing her or not, just because it's Prothean and she likes Prothean stuff. So at this point I came prepared with extra damage and extra accuracy weapons. I didn't worry too much about heatsink because, again, I'd rather do more damage per heatsink as opposed to less damage and more heatsink. So there's that. Ilos was pretty easy, like surprisingly easy. But again, like I mentioned before, I did come prepared. The difficulty area was the beginning area, I guess. And the difficulty enemy, however, was the Geth Armature. I will admit that one was pretty difficult. So yeah, but there wasn't that much hard to go on. So I guess the beginning area was pretty difficult. Sure, let's just go with that. Yeah. Next is the Citadel. I understand that I should have ended it on Virmire, but I want to keep going because this one is not as long. Next is the Citadel. The Citadel was not too difficult. Don't get me wrong, it was difficult, but it wasn't as bad. The difficulty area was outside the Citadel area, so the place that you spend in like 90% of this area. Once you're on the Citadel after Ilos, you spend 90% of the area outside of there. And the difficult enemy was the indoctrinated half of Saren, because I made Saren kill himself the first time, or the first area, so therefore Saren became indoctrinated. So it was after he became, I guess, a Turian Geth Stalker, I guess, that's when he became difficult. And that's pretty much the only major boss enemy was Saren, so there's that. And of course it's the boss area that was pretty difficult. So yeah, so Citadel, so that is Mass Effect 1. So here's some information I have about Mass Effect 1. Kaidan was killed in action. I don't know why. I like Kaidan more than Ashley, but whatever. I just like Kaidan die. This is kind of reminiscent of my very first playthrough. In fact, I think this is almost an exact copy of a playthrough. The only difference is the ending. I'll explain that in a bit. Yeah, Kaidan was dead. Rex was saved, or Rex was alive in Virmire. The Council was sacrificed because I just hate the ego that they get in the second game with the in the second game. Udina was named Human Council because that's how it's always been. And then I saved the Rachni Queen in Noveria. So yeah. Overall, aside from Therum, a lot easier than expected. That is my overall thoughts on Mass Effect 1. Was that overall, yeah, aside from Therum, it was a lot easier than I would have expected. I had figured I would have been here for like hours and hours doing this, because again, I'm not the best at this game. But aside from that, it was pretty easy. Now, I do have some advice for some of these. Mass Effect 2 has a lot more because there's a lot more I focused on. So the first advice I would advise for people who do want to try this is use shredder ammo and armor-piercing ammo when needed. That is why the Rachni was a lot easier to kill, because shredder ammo affects organics, while armor-piercing ammo or tungsten ammunition affects the Geth. So do keep that in mind. That's kind of why with Pharos, that's kind of why the enemies with in the Thorin area was a lot easier than expected, just because I used shredder ammo and whatnot, and I think they're organics. So yeah. Next is worry about weapons that excel in damage and accuracy, with the exception of the shotgun. I say shotguns aren't meant to be accurate anyways. They are more effective up close, and so if you have a shotgun that's more accurate up close, that just kind of seems unnecessary, I guess. So with shotguns, any other weapon, I would say worry about weapons that excel in damage and accuracy. Don't worry about whether you kind of have more shots before the gun overheats, because if you have more damage and less heat sink, then you wouldn't have to worry about that in the first place. So yeah. Next is Mass Effect 2. Now here's how I charted this. Originally I planned on just noting up the loyalty missions. So like I would only add notes about Miranda's, Jack's, Jacob's loyalty missions, and not worry about getting them. A lot of people, some of you guys may be asking, well, why not make note of getting the squad mate in the first place? And to that is because 4 of them are kind of readily available. You don't need to do much. 2 of them, you just need to start the game. And then the other 2, you just need to talk to them, and that's it. Everyone, so that'd be like Miranda, Jacob, Zaid, and Kasumi are the like 4 that you don't need to do shit on. Just either talk to them or just fucking start the game. That's it. But they all have loyalty missions, so I'll talk about that. That was the plan, but then I decided to add like different stuff. And I will go over the suicide mission, kind of my details, just in case if you guys wanted to know. So yeah, Mass Effect 2, Freedom's Progress. Fuck. That one was a lot more difficult than I would have expected. I kind of had high hopes with Eden Prime being difficult, so this is kind of what Freedom's Progress is kind of what I expected the Eden Prime to be. It was difficult as shit. Really, really difficult. It took me I kind of had to, thankfully I did mess up my character's look a bit. I wasn't happy with it, so I did go back and I remade my character's face and whatnot, and then I managed to, and then as I went on forward, it got a bit easier. So, but overall, a lot more trickier than I would have expected and wanted it to be. Next was Horizon. Pain in my ass, but not as bad as recruiting Jack. I'll talk about that in a moment. I got some words about Jack. Yeah, big pain in my ass. The problem was that I always bring Garrus and Miranda with me to Horizon. Garrus and Miranda kept fucking dying. It was so bad. Yeah, and then there was that, Centurion? No, not Centurion. I forgot what it is. That big, massive collector thing. Centurions are more, Mass Effect 3 Cerberus. But that big, massive, collector shell thing, flying thing, whatever. The collector's version of a harvester, I forgot the name of it, was pretty damn difficult. I think don't I have it on here somewhere? I should have. I guess not. Whatever. So yeah, Horizon, pain in my ass, but not as difficult as Dossier, the convict, or the Jack's recruitment mission. That one was pretty difficult, but I'll talk about that in a moment. Actually, I'll kind of talk about it now. I'll do that later. Next is the Legend of the the Lair of the Shadow Broker DLC. It was pretty normal. I did have some difficult spots, such as the area whenever Visir's car crashed, Visir herself, and whenever you're on the Shadow Broker's ship, the part where you have to wait for the door to hack, that one was pretty difficult. Those were the main difficult parts. The Shadow Broker itself wasn't as tricky as I thought it was going to be. It was a lot easier because, granted, I kind of had more experience with it, or something. So next we are going into loyalty missions. Now while I do have these in order, I'm gonna talk about them in the order that I did them. Can you guys which one I did first? No. I wouldn't. It's pretty, because some people who watch this video may not know who I favor the most. So the first loyalty mission I did was Miranda's. With this, I kind of had, as I was doing Hardened, I kind of had, like, low hopes for myself. I was like, man, I'm going to be at Miranda's for hours and hours. Oddly enough, there weren't any missions that I thought I'd spend a whole day on. That just shows how much, or how little I think of myself. I legit thought that I would be on one of these missions for a full day. It wasn't the case. Miranda's was difficult, don't get me wrong, but it was not something I couldn't really manage. It was a lot easier than Hardened because I constantly ran out of ammo on Hardened, but in this, I think I probably managed. And it was a lot easier than expected. The problem with it is, I think the problem with Miranda's that I kind of had low hopes on is the fact that there are constant enemies at like every corner, and they're trying to stop you. So I thought that would have been the problem there, but it wasn't. Um, I can't remember the difficult area. I don't have any difficulty areas here in this for whatever reason. So yeah, just keep that in mind that in some of these I may know where the difficulty areas were, some not. For Miranda's, I don't recall. The only one I could think of was after the interaction between Niket and Miranda with Captain Enyala. I think that would be that would be the only real difficult part of it was Captain Enyala or Emyala, whichever one. Yeah. Other than that, pretty standard. Next was Garrus. It was pretty normal until the double mech area before you meet up with Harkin. And my god, that was a problem. Here's why I think this was the problem. Throughout this whole before I did Insanity, I would always in Mass Effect 2, I would mainly use, with the exception of loyalty missions, I would mainly use two different, or I would use two of the same. I have two go-to squad mates, Miranda and Garrus, because Garrus is a lot more useful than everyone else, and I have a crush on Miranda. That's just how it is. And that's my excuse for the purpose of this video. Plus, I feel like I didn't have Samara or Thane, and while Jack is a powerful biotic, she's not a useful one as Miranda, because Miranda has warp and overload, but Jack has more offensive attacks, while Miranda kind of has more defensive biotic attacks, kind of, if that makes sense. So yeah, and for this, but whenever I did Insanity, I kind of wanted to spread out, kind of use more people, and for this one, and for Garrus, I used Jack instead of Miranda, and Jack was not useful at all. So yeah, around the double mech area, I kind of started to run low on ammunition, and so around that time, finding spare thermal clips became a problem. It became a massive problem somehow. So yeah, with that, just know that's what happened. And there was no real strategy against the two mechs. It was just fucking survive. That's all it was. So yeah, there's that. Next, number 3 was Mordin. A lot easier than planned. Granted, whenever I was doing Hardened, there was some stuff that I struggled with, such as dealing with Clan Werelock for the first time. Yeah, because I kind of, again, I'm playing a Paragon person, so I kind of wanted to limit or restrict how much Renegade I used. I did use some Renegade, don't get me wrong, because I want to make this easier. So, whenever I did Hardened, whenever I did Hardened, the first time, I didn't, there's a part with Clan Werelock where you're supposed to like use a Renegade and then you shoot gas tanks, making the battle a bit easier because one of the leaders in Clan Werelock is just, how would I put this? Dead. The Clan Werelock leader, I'm assuming, has a lot more defenses than the rest of the clan. So, if you don't use Renegade, you have to deal with him. But considering the fact that I'm playing on Insanity, and I tried to limit the Renegade because I'm playing Paragon, so I didn't deal with the Renegade part. So, which means I had to kill the Clan Werelock leader. But then after a while, on Harden, I just gave up because I died there so many damn times on there that I decided to just wait it out. And I decided to just do Renegade because I was like, fuck it, do this. But with Insanity, I kind of rushed the damn thing because I'm here trying to survive, and at that point it became a lot easier than necessary, or a lot easier than expected or planned. So yeah, number 4 is Grunt. Easiest loyalty mission thus far. Thus far, I haven't gone to Mordin, Kasumi, Zaid, whoever, or yeah, Thane, Samara. I haven't gone to them yet. So up to this point in my adventure, Grunts was the easiest. I did not die. I think I died maybe once, but not to the Threshermaw. I did kill the Threshermaw, but this one was a lot. This was the easiest loyalty mission thus far. It was so rewarding to just sit back and be like, thank you for this. This was amazing. So yeah, so that Grunt was number 4. Number 5 was Thane. Pretty standard. It wasn't difficult or easy because you don't have to kill anyone. You just have to keep an eye on I forgot his name. On Talid or whatever. So yeah, pretty standard. Yeah, so that was 5. Number 6 was Jacob. About as difficult as expected, with mechs and other members of the hunter groups. It's about as difficult as you might expect someone with my skills to suffer through. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So that was 6. 7 was Jack. A lot easier than a lot of these you'll see like I'll say like a lot easier than expected, or easier than planned, or I would say like it was a lot easier than whatever. That's because I had very low hopes for myself. But yeah, this one was easier than usual. In the past, I did have problems with the clan that was set up in the place itself, in Pragia, the building. But it was pretty. But that was in Harden. In Insanity, it was pretty easy. It was a lot easier. I guess at this point, I increased weapon damage and whatnot. So yeah. And before you ask, and just put this straight, yes, I did keep peaceful between the two. I will not side with Miranda, because I love Miranda too much, which is why I don't think I'll romance Jack. Just cause like in order to romance Jack, because I want to stay peaceful between the two, but I refuse to side with Jack in the argument between Miranda and Jack. Meaning the only way I could possibly romance Jack is if I pass the Renegade's Paragon speech checks to keep her loyal to me, so it's just not weird. But other than that, but yeah. Anyway, so I did make sure they were peaceful between the two, with no bloodshed. Next was Tali, which is pretty difficult, but it was easier than in Hardened, because that one took a long time. That one I do know for certain. It is the area before you meet or you do find Tali's dad's body. It is that room before you find his body on the floor with like the staircase going down. That part was the most difficult, because you're exposed from the bottom and the top side, the top left side. So something like that was pretty tricky to manage. Plus, I kept running out of ammunition, which means I had to like use Adrenaline Rush to run down, get thermal clips, and then just come back up. That was it. Sorry, I heard a door close. I am trying to make sure that no one is home, or that no one is here when they shouldn't be. Paranoia gets in the way. So yeah. Next was Samara. Usually around this time, I would usually save Jack's loyalty mission to like the last loyalty mission, but like I mentioned before, I do want to try in these different romances. Because again, I've only done 2 romances, which has been Liara and Miranda. So once I was done with Insanity, I wanted to go back and try all these different romances. So I kind of want to figure out how, if I wanted to romance Jack, how I could do it. And it turns out, if you rush Shock Trooper, if you rush the Shock Trooper skill, it's a lot, you get to romance Jack a lot easier, a lot quicker. So, yeah, there's that. So yeah, next is Samara. Again, pretty standard if you know what you're doing. The amount of times I've done this Samara's loyalty mission and thought I messed up is every damn time. But this time, I didn't save. Thankfully, I didn't mess it up, but I forgot to save before talking with Morinth, so it was a lot trickier to do. But thankfully, I one-shot that whole damn thing. Or one-hit that whole thing. But yeah, pretty standard. You don't really have to fight anyone. Next is Zaid. Much easier than expected, but I did use what I call the mech rush strat. Now, what that does is, for some of you guys who don't know, it's pretty easy to do. I don't know of anyone trying this, but it's if you practice it, it works well. Which is where at the part where like, it's the part where like once you enter the door at the other end of the room that ends the mission. There's a mech in front of it, in front of the door, protecting or kind of guarding the door. If a bullet makes contact with that mech, it will wake up and kind of attack you. But you don't have to destroy the mech. You can just rush that whole area, because once the mech wakes up, then the bridge opens for you to access the other platform to exit the door and finish the mission. But if you wake up the mech, the bridge will open earlier. And then that way you can use like Adrenaline Rush or whatever. At this point, my Adrenaline Rush was at the one where like you take like 50% less damage, which did nothing. I should have added Storm Speed leggings to it, but whatever, I didn't. But yeah, and then after that, I just did it. It took me 3 to 4 attempts to go through that. I did do the Paragon ending for the first time. The Paragon ending of Zaid. I like that one much better. The only problem I have is that Zaid is like, you can't leave me to die. You can't leave me to die. It's like, I could, but would I? No. And like as he's burning, like you guys have a heart to heart. I'm like, now's not a good time. He's dying here, but hey, it's better than letting Zaid have revenge. Because he did lie to you. That's the only problem, I'd say. Is that he did lie to you. Yeah. Kasumi's surprisingly easy. I figured Donovan Hawk would have been a problem. He was the least of my problems. My most problems came from the beginning battle. Once you're in the vault, that was it. That was my only concern. Yeah, pretty standard. And then finally, Legion was number 12. Obviously, he's the last one. There were some rough patches, but there's nothing severe. I'd say the only major problem was, I think, I can't really, there was 2 different difficulty areas. I would definitely say it had to have been either when after the virus was uploaded, or before the virus was uploaded, or you're starting the download, to decide whether you want to destroy it or override them. To destroy the heretics or override them, whatever. That part, leaving the ship wasn't that big of a concern. There weren't that many problems with this, but that was about it. So yeah, next let's move on to the suicide mission, because that's the main area. So part 1, here are my tech experts and squad mates, or my squad leader. My tech expert was Tali. This was the first time I've ever used Tali as a tech expert. I've either used Kasumi or Legion. I think I've used Kasumi the most, or maybe Legion. So putting Tali in here, I didn't know what to expect. It was pretty standard. And then my squad leader was Miranda. Part 1 was a lot easier than expected. My only problem was trying to make sure Tally stayed alive in the vent. But other than that, it was just a matter of rushing the whole damn thing. Harbinger has been a problem throughout the entirety of the collector base. I think I still have the hardest mission on here, which I'll talk about in a moment. So yeah, that one, I figured I might have to struggle with that, or maybe whoever was my tech expert would have died. Thankfully, it didn't happen. So, yeah. So part 2, my biotics expert was Jack, and my squad leader was Jacob, and my escort was Morden. So yeah, because I wanted to make sure Morden stayed alive, because I love Morden so much. He is awesome. This one I was kind of more worried about because of the Husks and Scion. But I did have some rough patches. The wave of Husks and Scion became a problem, but nothing too difficult. Yeah, I think it's because like within part 1, I between part 1 and 2, I kind of had a break of just like board games, dinner, dessert, whatever. That's kind of what it was. So once I got back into playing, my head was kind of clear or something. But again, nothing too severe. Part 3, my squad mates were Garrus and Miranda. I should have replaced Garrus with Thane because Miranda has unique dialogue in part 3, and Garrus isn't as useful as Thane, since in my playthrough, Thane had heavy warp and Miranda had heavy overload. So even if collectors don't really use shields a whole lot, but since I used Miranda for the unique dialogue at the end, I should have used Thane for heavy warp, and also since Miranda has warp also, that would have made it a bit more interesting. It was tricky, especially at the Scion parts and the Human Reaper. I did bring the M180 Kane with me, which I thought would have helped me with the Human Reaper, but it did fuck all for me. It did weaken it, sure, but that's about it. Okay, so yeah, that is my that was my experience with Mass Effect 2 Legend Insanity mode. This one definitely showed what I experienced throughout most of these. So let me go over the pointless info before I go over the advice I have. So for part 2, or Mass Effect 2, I saved Malin's data, I destroyed the Geth Heretics and the Collector base, and all 12 of my squad mates survived. And I didn't romance anyone in Mass Effect 2, because long live Liara. Something like that. So yes, so now let's move on to my advice that I have for you guys. Keep an eye on squad mates' abilities. Alright? Squad mates like Miranda and Thane can be useful against collectors with heavy warp. As such, turn off the automatic squad skill level ups. Just so that way you can, because if you do take my advice and use Thane and Miranda for the last part, you can add heavy warp to both Miranda and Thane, and then that way you can bring both of them along with them, and then that way they can do a lot more damage along with the biotic research damage upgrades. 2, make sure everyone is loyal. No shit, but that is something to keep in mind as you go through. And it goes beyond the fact that like you could get a good ending in Mass Effect 3. Some of these enemies have, or some of your squad mates have really good what's the word I'm looking for? Third skill or loyalty skills. Like Garrus has armor piercing ammo, which is really good to have. That's about the only one I can remember at the moment. There are probably some other good ones, but I can't remember. But Garrus has armor piercing ammo, so which will be pretty good to have, especially if you go back and you play Mass Effect 2 again. That's what I did. Whenever Garrus became loyal the first time, I unlocked armor piercing ammo, and then that's what I used throughout the majority or throughout the entirety of this playthrough and half of Mass Effect 3. But that's just because I got the armor piercing ammo by just talking to Garrus. before I did Insanity mode, so there's that. Next, 3. Upgrade as much as possible. Weapons, armor, biotics, tech. I don't care if it affects the squad mates or whatever. Like I mentioned before, if you use my strategy of giving Miranda and Thane heavy warp, and if you upgrade their biotics, that would do a lot more damage to the armor or barriers of the collectors, and Harbinger, by the way. Warp affects barriers and armor, and Harbinger uses those too. He uses both armor and barriers. So that is something to keep in mind. Something like that is very useful to have. And finally, take advantage of the retrain research. The retrain skill research. So mostly because if you're like me and you use soldier, some of the ammunition types you use, disruptor, incendiary, and cryo, won't be as useful. So you may want to put more into like your adrenaline rush, concussive shot, combat mastery, and if you're me, and if you do like me, the armor piercing ammo. It's pretty useful to have, and that's something I advise you guys take advantage of. Kind of just go through and do that. Yeah. The hardest mission in this, there was 2 in here, but the one I included was the collector ship, aka my personal hell. The first difficulty area was the first collector encounter, which, get this, took 39 minutes for me to finish. I did add, it was actually 34 minutes, but I did add an extra 5 because I'm pretty sure that's how long it took me before I used the counter. Other than that, it took me 39 minutes to beat that part. The second difficult one was, like I mentioned before, Dossier, the convict, recruiting Jack. That second room after you release Jack, not the main room where Jack is released, but like, or where the cryostasis was, but the rooms after that, the second room, before you kind of beat the boss of Purgatory, was really damn difficult. That stupid fucking mech got in the way. But Harbinger became a much bigger problem in the collector ship. So yeah, there's that. And main weapon of choice was the Matic. There was 2. There was the Carnifex, or there was 3. There was the main sniper you get from the collector ship. There was the Matic. Then there was the Carnifex. Then there was the Matic. Some of the other weapons I used was the Eviscerator, which wasn't useful. I don't use shotguns a whole lot. And the grenade launcher, even though I think the only time I switched from grenade launcher was the M180 Kane during the final part of the collectors. Other than that, I'm pretty straightforward. Next is Mass Effect 3. My personal hell. So this one, how I wanted to note these was the priorities. There's a lot of priorities on here, so I kind of wanted to do the priority missions. Every now and then I did, there are a couple in here where I did go beyond the priorities and I just added something else. So let's start off with So I do want to say that in Legendary Edition you do get like special powers unless during your, I think more like your second time around, depending on who you talk to and whatnot. So do keep that in mind that I did talk to almost all of them. The main ones I did use nothing but ammo stuff. So the people I would need to talk to for that one would have been Garrus and Liara. So I did use armor piercing ammo and warp ammo, but I'll let you know what's to win. So I did start off with armor piercing ammo. Priority Mars was easy, but somehow really fun. I was having fun killing these people. I don't know why. I was just like, this is fun. I did not do I didn't write down Priority Earth just because I figured that's pretty standard. I was having fun with this one. The difficulty area was the ambush after calling Cerberus over, and the difficulty area was the Centurions, I guess. Yeah. Next is Priority Eden Prime. Worst experience ever. God damn it. I should have saved this one for later, but god damn it, was this difficult. Let me tell you why. The difficulty area was either the Cerberus encounter after the first Prothean pod video or the second half of the stasis shutdown process. Those were the two main problems, and they both fucking sucked. The difficulty enemies were either the Atlas, the Turians, the turrets, or the Centurions. Those stupid fucking frag grenades became a problem, and you were going to notice that that is a pattern throughout most of these. There are 3 main enemies in these that cause problems for me throughout the entirety of this game, both of which involve fucking grenades. So yeah. Priority Palaven, pretty normal with a few rough patches. That's pretty much it. I did struggle on some parts, but other than that, it seemed pretty standard. The difficult area was the Turian camp where Victus is, that you had to clear out to make sure Victus is safe. And the difficulty enemy were the Marauders. Yes. Next was Sur'Kesh, and the priority Sur'Kesh. It was an unbearable struggle. The difficulty area was the Kirrahe level of the area where you first come into contact with the turrets in this. Goddamn the turrets. Turrets are going to be the biggest problem you may notice throughout the majority of this game. They are not the main ones, but they are a good majority of them. Next is Grissom Academy. Probably one of my few worst experiences ever. Let me tell you, if I have to deal with Jack saying "nice one, Prangley" one more time, I'm gonna kill myself. It is that bad. I spent almost a couple of hours on this one as a whole. You guys notice a pattern with these? Jack has become the biggest. Missions with that Jack is in have been my biggest problems ever. Saving Jack and then Grissom Academy. The only one that wasn't a problem of mine that involved Jack was the damn suicide missions and Jack's loyalty mission. That's it. But Jack's missions as a whole became a damn problem. So, speaking of which, let's talk about, the difficulty area. The difficulty area was the courtyard with Jack's help. Some good that did. Sarcasm. He said sarcastically. Not fucking helpful. I had to do everything myself. And the difficulty enemy was the combat engineer, because this fucker sets up so many damn turrets, heals the shield of both the Atlas and the turrets, that instead of just saying that the turrets and the Atlas became the problem, I might as well just say the damn combat engineer became a problem, because he kept placing turrets in every goddamn place. So, yeah, definitely not something I would have expected. Next, is the second of the non-priority list, Tuchanka First Fleet. My first rage quit ever. In Insanity, ever. I guess you could say that maybe Escape the or Dossier the Convict was one of them, but I just feel like maybe I was tired at that point. But with the Turian fleet on Tuchanka, I wasn't really tired. I just got so mad that I was like, maybe I need to sleep on it. And it is the part for difficult part I put for Palaven, which is where Garrus yells if you bring him along with you. But it is that area where after you clear it out, you end the mission. And the difficult enemies was all of them. Every single damn one of them. The Harvester, the Marauders, the Cannibals, the fucking Brutes. Yes, all of them. Fucking difficult. The Cannibals kept throwing fucking grenades. The Marauders kept healing and helping out with the Cannibals, and they kept shooting at me because they are the only ones. I'm pretty sure it was the Marauders or the Cannibals that kept shooting at me every time I tried to move away from the frag grenade because I was out of cover. because I'm trying not to die. The brutes became a problem because they bomb rush you immediately once that checkpoint starts, and the harvester because they keep fucking firing at you even when you're in cover, which can kill you. Brutes and harvesters are the two things that can kill you at this point if you're in cover. If we're not including the frag grenades by the cannibals. So yeah, that was a problem. Now, on the opposite hand, Tuchanka, the bomb, way easier than I expected. No different, so much so that there weren't really any difficult parts or enemies. But if I had to pick one, I would say the part where you would have to defend Victus' son, and I guess the Atlas. Those were the two main struggles, I guess. Those are the two main difficulty parts and areas. Which leads to the next one, priority Tuchanka. The first priority sets Palaven to not be a major pain in my ass. Granted, still some rough patches, but it wasn't anything to be concerned with. The difficult area was the area after leaving the City of Ancients tunnel. I would say that was pretty much it. And the enemies were the Ravagers, I guess. Not really that big of a problem. Priority Citadel died once, which was my fault. Which was the difficulty area was the indoor lounge with the turret. That's what killed me. So there's that. So after Priority Citadel, kind of keep in mind that at this point I have been using armor piercing ammos up until after Citadel 2, after which I switched to warp ammo because that's whenever you first come across, because with Priority Citadel 2, you come across phantoms which have barriers, and then in the Ardat Yakshi Monastery, you come across banshees which have barriers on them also. And warp ammo affects barriers, armors, and health. So the only thing that warp ammo doesn't affect is shields. Now, I do think there are some stipulations to that, but whatever. It worked out in my favor anyways. So yeah, it was difficult, but not as insufferable as it was on Hardened. I am talking about the Ardat Yakshi Monastery. Because this wasn't really that big. If this wasn't that big of a problem, I wouldn't have included it. But since I struggled forever to do this one on Hardened, I figured I might include it. That it was difficult, but it wasn't unbearable. It wasn't as unbearable as it was on Hardened. And the difficulty area was the final area, the room with the bomb. Since all of my squad mates got saved, it's where Samara holds up the barrier or the orb around them to protect herself and her daughters. So around that area where you meet two banshees. These banshees, you may notice, are going to become the biggest damn problem ever. The difficulty enemy was the banshees. They're difficult as fuck. So yeah, next was priority Rannoch or Rannoch. I'll say Rannoch. Not as difficult as on Hardened, but it was still a struggle. You'll notice, like I mentioned at the top of the video, a lot of these are just going to be like me comparing my experiences to Hardened, just because it's kind of what I expected. Oddly enough, the Reaper wasn't as big of a problem as I thought it was going to be. Granted, I still died, but it wasn't that big of a problem. The difficulty area was the upper level of the main base where you have to fight off the Geth Primes, so you're safe to use the ledge on the Reaper. And the difficult enemy was Geth Primes. Priority Thessia. Pretty difficult, but not too complicated. For whatever dumbass reason, the game save pointed me at a part where I took damage. So that means every time I died and loaded up the save, or I respawned, I took damage out in the open, and then I would have to quickly run to cover so I don't die. Restarted every time I died with 1 bar of health and no shields. I don't know who to blame for that one, me or the game. I'll blame myself for the 1 bar of health, but the game I'm blaming the game for saving me with damage, taking damage. The difficulty area was the area just outside of the church. I'm assuming that's what it is. With the scientist areas. And interestingly enough, Kai Lang was not a problem in this one. The difficulty enemy was either the Harvesters or the Banshees. The Harvesters, because like I mentioned before with the Tuchanka Turian fleet area, the Harvesters are one of the few enemies that can kill you even if you're behind cover for whatever reason. I guess it's for, there's a logical reason behind it, or it makes sense as to why, but still, it was pretty standard. Yeah, and then obviously Banshees became a bigger problem. Next was Priority Horizon. Pretty difficult, but I did rush the whole thing as much as I could. I desperately needed Miranda. Weird, considering the fact I didn't romance her at all, but still, I mean, I needed to get to Miranda just to get it over with. The difficulty area was the proper Reaper encounter with the Marauders and Banshees and Ravagers and Husks. And the difficult enemy was, surprise, surprise, the Banshees. Yeah, Banshees pretty fucking difficult. Yeah. Next, as we move on to finalize the Mass Effect 3 thing, Priority Cerberus Headquarters was not as difficult as expected. Thought I'd be fighting Kai Lang for hours. Yes, I thought I'd be fighting. By the time I reached Priority Earth, I figured that at that point I still would have been fighting Kai Lang. That's how bad I am, or that's how difficult he is. So yeah, just in case some of you guys are wondering, Cerberus Headquarters fucking sucks. Difficult area, the Elusive Man's office. Difficulty enemy, all of them. Mostly it was really hard to tell who was the bigger problem. But yeah, so the area where you have to fight Kai Lang became a bigger problem than the rest. And again, I wasn't really sure if it was the Phantoms, I forget the Centurion or the Assault Troopers, Kai Lang, or the Snipers. I forgot their names. I figured I didn't know who became the bigger problem, because the only times I've ever been killed by Kai Lang was close up as opposed to further out. So that's about it. All of them became a problem. And since it wasn't really easy to tell who killed me the most, I was just gonna put all of them. Priority Earth Part 1. The Part 1 area being dealing with Hades Cannon, but definitely before the goodbyes. Really difficult, got annoyed a few times, but hey, I saved Cortez. That was the plan, was to save Cortez for once. Sorry about that. My grandmother showed up, and I didn't want her knowing. I don't want her knowing I do this stuff, just because it's kind of embarrassing. So where was I at? I'm trying to remember. Right, saving Cortez. The thing with Cortez was that I didn't want to go off on the side here. I played as a female, and I, like I mentioned at the top, I'm playing as a female, and I saved Cortez. It was a very confusing thing for me, because the only time I've ever seen Far with Cortez was videos of him being romanced. So I was kind of confused, because I hadn't romanced Liara at the time. I didn't finalize my romance with Liara by the time I was talking to Steve, I think. I can't remember. Probably not. So I was worried about the fact that, like, maybe my female Shepard was gonna flirt with Steve or something. It's like, you can't do that. That's kind of weird. But then I remember that, like, my Shepard's already seeing someone. So there's that. If this fan is gonna cause problems for the quality of the video, I hope not. But yeah, so it's just as a whole, it was very interesting. It was very nice to see Cortez survive. Because again, like, all the conversation with Steve I have seen has been like with him romance, so it's just like, that's a feeling I don't want to happen again. But I feel like I don't know what it is with these Mass Effect characters. I always think they're good as friends as opposed to romances. I don't consider Jack a friend. I just consider her an acquaintance. Speaking of friendship, I was gonna go on a bit of a side tangent here. I find it. I like on how like Shepard and Miranda are like. If whenever you romance her, it seems like a nice thing. She seems like a perfect fit for Shepard, just because they're professional, and once they're like alone together, they can just be themselves and whatnot. But even as friends, they're very professional. They understand each other. They they talk business a lot, so it's pretty interesting to see. And Yeah, so Priority Earth Part 1, when it comes to dealing with the Hades canon, it was really difficult. I got annoyed a few times, but like I mentioned, I got to save Steve, so that's all that matters. The only part I got really annoyed with was, and I put it here, the difficult area was the checkpoint. It was mainly the part after you destroyed the Hades cannon. I don't know why I said checkpoint after destroying cannon, but it's mainly after you destroyed the cannon because it's the banshees and the I think cannibals mostly. I don't know if marauders show up. The banshees became a problem at first, and then I grabbed an M180 cane, and then I just used it on the banshee once it came back. Once it got on the battlefield, and then from there it just the cannibals became difficult to deal with. So yeah, there's that. I hope I ended on Steve. That would have been weird. Um, so yeah, I wrote here difficult enemy cannibals. Banshees just became a nuisance. So yeah, next is Earth Part 2 after the goodbyes. Um, I'm not gonna lie, I almost cried because I worked so hard to get to Earth, and I have a thing for Liara. I feel like Liara is a good person to have as both a romance and a friend. So just seeing her being a romance option, and all this feelings of just like utter hatred and like relief of finally getting up to Earth, like all the feelings just came in, and then it's just, oh, I almost cried. Especially whenever Liara like showed my Shepherd the like gift that she had for her. It was, it was, oh. Anyways, so yeah, it was difficult. So part 2 was difficult as hell, but it was totally worth it. Yeah. The difficult area was the second half, or defending the second missile battery. Mainly because that's when it's like a last resort type thing. And yeah, and the difficult enemy, as always, is the Banshees. I feel like after the Ardat Yakshi monastery, all the difficult enemies are just the Banshees. Like that's all it is. Um, so yeah, that is pretty much it. That's all I can say. Trying to think. Trying to think what else I'm missing. I can't really think of anything else. So, with that being said, let's go over some of the important details I made for Mass Effect 3. I did forget, I think, one or two here, so yeah. So number 1, I brought peace between the Geth and the Quarians. That's how I usually do it. That's how I've always been doing it. And I feel like it's a nice change of pace. I'd rather have peace than just side with one. So there's that. Next was I destroyed the Reapers. I know there's like 4 different options. You can deny, or you can refuse everything. You can destroy the Reapers. You can synthesize, or you can control. I chose to destroy because that's how it's always been, and that's how it always will be, because I can't stand doing the other endings. It is ridiculous. not to say I hate the other endings. It's just that I want like a good. I like getting the best endings possible. And that's just how it is. Speaking of good endings, I ended up getting the best ending, which is where Shepard survives the destruction of the Reapers. That is the only way for Shepard to survive. The refusal. Shepard dies during the refusal, the synthesize, and the control. The only way Shepard can survive, if you have like the best possible war attributes, which is around 7,800, is if you destroy the Reapers. Other than that, if you have 7,800 and you pick anything else aside from destroy Reapers, Shepard dies anyways. So yeah, and there's one in here I forgot to mention. I cured the genophage. Yeah, that's how it's always been. That's how it always will be. Least used squad mate was EDI. I learned EDI is my least used squad mate. And I think my most used is either Liara or Garrus. Garrus has always been my most used. From Mass Effect 2 on, like, Garrus has always been my most used. My most used squad mate. I'm not sure why. I guess it's because of the fact that, like, I use Miranda because she's kind of a biotic person, because she's around more than Thane and Jack and Samara. And so I need a biotics person and a tech person, and for some reason I don't use Mordin. So there's that. I might have to use him a lot more though. So yeah. So any advice I could give to you for Mass Effect 3 is get any/all intel for Glyph. For some guys who don't know, Glyph gives you, he doesn't give you intel. You find intel, Glyph gives them to you, and then you can upgrade either your power damage, power recharge time, shields, health, weapon damage, all that stuff. It's pretty useful. I advise you guys getting that, and you can find them in Liara's office, which happens to be Miranda's old office. So there's that. Next is limit how much weight you carry. This may not seem important, but trust me, if you use powers as much as I do, I think by the end of it, I was running the Matic, the Paladin, and the Blood Pack SMG all at Mark 5, because that's the max I could have it. You can get like max of like Mark 10, but the only way to do that is by importing a Mass Effect 3 character and then going from there. So once I'm done with my Mass Effect 2 character, I'm gonna do that. Yeah, carry a shit ton of Medigel. That is very important. Carry a shit ton of Medigel, because it'll help in the long run, because you're gonna need to heal yourself a lot. Get through the end. Play through the game more than 5 times before starting Insanity mode. I started Insanity mode on my 5th playthrough. Yeah, so just keep that in mind. If you're gonna play the game on Insanity, I suggest you go through it 10 times, kind of get a hold of how things are. And I don't know, I guess the other ones would be like have a romance option, just because, I don't know, if you're playing on Insanity, it'd be nice to have someone, you know. And if you do want more advice for romance options, pick one that is a squad mate. So we have Ashley, Kaidan, Garrus, Tali, and Liara. Those are like the main 5 romance options that end up being squad mates in the second game or the third game. But you don't really get Garrus and Tali until Mass Effect 2, so I'd say just good luck with that. Do whatever. But yeah, and the reason that is because, like, you know, you get to spend time with someone that your character cares about or something. So yeah, so here's how everything ended. Just because it feels like it's been like an hour or so. So I kind of want to refresh your memories. So in Mass Effect, so the main area I went to was a female Shepard, which was originally supposed to be male. I romanced Liara, which was originally supposed to be Miranda. I understand that like genders and romances aren't important, but just in case you guys are kind of curious, I did a Paragon style or playthrough. I had a combat style soldier. Caden died. Rex survived. Council was sacrificed. Udina was a human council. I saved the Arachnite Queen, saved Manus Data, destroyed the Geth heretics and the collector base. Everyone survived the suicide mission. Liara was romanced in Mass Effect 1. No one was romanced in Mass Effect 2. And Liara was finalized in Mass Effect 3. I brought peace between the Geth and the Quarians. The Reaper was destroyed. I got the best possible ending. The genophage was cured. I'm trying to remember what else happened. And I saved everyone. Samara survived, Kasumi, Zaid, all of that. So yeah, my main weapon of choice was the Bloodpack SMG. I did use the Matic for a time, but that was up until I was able to get the Bloodpack SMG, or whenever I finally gave in and got the Bloodpack SMG. I loved it so much, but for some reason it's kind of weird. Just because like it has armor piercing bullets already, but like if you use warp ammo and you headshot banshees, it doesn't really add more damage onto it like it should, but whatever. Let's see what else. My final thoughts overall with the insanity mode or the insanity difficulty of Mass Effect. Fuck me. No, I'm not doing this again. Well, I love a good challenge. I really love a good challenge. This was not worth it. If I was asked, if you saw me on the street and you just randomly asked me like, "Well, are you gonna play this thing? Are you gonna play Insanity mode again?" No, I will not. I can't. I can't anymore. It is so stressful for me. And yes, it is my fault. I will admit that. It is my fault. I didn't prepare well enough. I never said I was fully prepared, but I wasn't prepared well enough to do so. So yeah, with that, trying to remember some other useful information. Yeah, I saved Miranda. Oh, yeah. So this kind of leads on to the next thing. So like I mentioned before with this is kind of like an end of the video thing where like if you want to stop here, you can leave, but if you guys want to hear more of my experiences with Insanity mode, here you go. Or Insanity difficulty. So with this, obviously plans had changed. Like I mentioned before, I was gonna play a male and romance Miranda, but obviously that changed. But one of the plans that stayed the same was I was gonna kind of be a bit more out there with some of these people I've been neglecting, like Kelly Chambers and Steve Cortez mostly. One of the ideas I had was to talk with Samara and kind of get a romance with her. But the problem with that is I just wasn't interested, you know. I get it. But I did, however, I did talk with Kelly, and I really like Kelly. I kind of get the idea. I now get the reason why people say that that she should have been more than just what she became, because she was awesome. I felt bad for her once I asked her to join the Normandy. I have seen like videos of like every possible romance, so Kelly, Samara, and then all the main romances. Even more, I don't need to watch Morinth. I know how that one ends. She kills you. But with that, so yeah, I knew what was happening, but kind of like experiencing it yourself is a different thing. Like, yeah, watching it, sure, that's just how it is. it's kind of like with me romancing like Liara or Miranda. Like, yeah, sure. I'm excited to see the romance scene between them, but experiencing it is just something different. You know, that sounds weird, but with Kelly, I just felt bad like asking her to join the Normandy and whatnot. Um, asking her to asking her to join me on the Normandy period. Telling her to get new identification, change face, name, whatever. Coming back after the Citadel Part 2 and her telling me I saved her life or whatnot. It was just really nice. And with Steve was different because, like I mentioned, like 2 or 3 times, the only time I've ever seen Steve was, or like aside from like the introduction and like talking about his husband, was romancing him. So just seeing like a nice relaxing time with Steve at a bar or whatnot and not flirting with him and just being friends, it was really a nice thing to see. um I, t- I, t- I don't know. That was kind of my original plan throughout the whole thing, or throughout the whole thing, was in Mass Effect 1 and 2, I would just talk to um, anyone and everyone except for like maybe Miranda, because the only time I'm used to talking to her was if I'm romancing her, so just that whole thing of like flirting with Miranda would come off as weird. But just like talking to like Thane and Garrus and Kasumi and Zaid or whoever, was my original plan. But then, kind of just to kind of like use it as like a break of like, all right, now that I'm done with this mission, let me talk to Miranda, Grunt, Mordin, Jacob, Samara, whoever, anyone and everyone. And I didn't do that because I went from being like, all right, let me relax, to let me get this shit over with. So that is what ended up happening. But overall, I really loved during my experiences with playing Insanity mode, I learned that I really love the characters a lot more than I thought I would. Because again, I kind of expected some of these stuff. So yeah, now that I'm done with this, I'll go on to like try different romances, and then who knows, maybe I'll talk about them, kind of give my thoughts. A lot of people have like different opinions on romances. I don't know why. It seems like a weird thing, but hey, opinions are opinions. I want to do that. I wanted to do that with Cyberpunk, but I feel like there's a lot more people have a lot more opinions about Mass Effect romances than Cyberpunk romances. So yeah, I will definitely make a video about that soon. I'm gonna have to. I want to, because that is my nature. My nature is to talk about sex 24/7 apparently. So yeah, with that being said, hope you guys enjoyed and watched this long ass video. If you guys did watch this long ass video and you want to show some support, hit the like button if you did enjoy, and if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button, and hit the bell notification to be notified as to when I upload. I talk about video games a whole lot just because I don't know how to do playthroughs of video games. If I could, I definitely would. I would love to do playthroughs of video games, just going through, showing you guys how I do things and whatnot. But yeah. And leave a comment down below. Have you guys played Insanity mode? And if so, what do you guys what were your thoughts? What missions caused you the most problems? Which one was easiest? Which one did you think was going to be a problem but ended up being easy, and vice versa, if you guys think that way. And yeah, just let me know your thoughts. Lose a Maniac. Sorry, I